Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're watching this. And today we're talking to Eric from Oracle. Eric, maybe you'd like to introduce yourself in a more fulsome way.
Great, thanks, Catherine. As mentioned, I'm Eric from Oracle. So I'm the
Perfect.
Vice President of Sales for the EMEA region. I lead our sales team across the region, from the UK, actually from Iceland all the way down to the tip of Africa and into the Middle East. So been with Oracle for almost a year. Been in the hospitality and technology and travel technology business for more years than I'd like to admit here, but I'll go ahead and do it and say 18. And that started in the US, as you can probably tell from my accent. Took me to Singapore for 6 years and the last 9 here in London and the UK. So this is now my home.
So you've seen a huge array of things changing, possibly in the hospitality sector, as hospitality has noticed that there is technology.
I have, it's 15 months is a long time and 18 months is a long time for change. And when you look across 18 years, it's not only in the hospitality sector, but it's really what's happening across all industries and how hospitality embraces that and brings in best practices. I think that what's been really interesting over these past 2 decades, if I can say that, is that you get this mix of technology advancements, enhancements, but you've also got this change in consumer behavior. And we really don't think about it much now, but it's a sea change in how we are open with our lives and open with our information and data. And you bring those two together and with the tech and the behavior changes, and it really creates some really cool opportunities for hoteliers and their tech partners to provide great experiences for their guests.
Do you think, we're talking about the experiences and the great experiences that we can all enjoy in hotels, increasingly with the help of technology, do you think hotels understand that full guest journey? As hotels have been taught by the OTAs to think about words like funnel, which they hadn't thought about before. And traditionally, you walk into the hotel and you see the receptionist, and that's what hotel understands as the journey, the physical journey into the hotel. Do you think hotels understand that? And how?
Well, I think they do. It depends on how you define the journey, right? Is the journey the actual journey itself? Someone getting on a plane or a train or driving and then walk through the front doors of the hotel, or is it really a much broader sort of spectrum? When I think of what I call the hospitality value chain, it's from the beginning when the guest is thinking about, hey, where am I going to go? Or the corporate traveler saying, okay, I need to be here for this set of meetings, all the way through the stay and then post-trip. Yes, in short, hoteliers do understand that, but there's always room for improvement, right? And I think that the major area is to look not in just the microcosm of the guest stay you were just mentioning, but in how guests interact on a daily basis with other businesses and individuals. So, I mean, what channels do they use? And how do they make their buying decisions? And what do their actions say about their priorities and how their preferences are formed? Guests don't change the moment they walk through that front door. They bring with them their collective experiences and outlook on how they interact and enjoy the world. So I think the more the hotels can learn about their guests when they're outside their properties, the better they can provide that world-class service when they're on property.
And is that something that we hear a lot about? Loyalty, and the brands were very eager, the hotel brands are very eager to form that kind of defensive circle around loyalty programs, and they were all about loyalty and delivering it. We've seen that less now, I think, since the pandemic, because the big loyalty guys who are the big business travelers haven't been traveling. So there hasn't really been a big loyalty play. But is technology a way to create sort of true, actual loyalty, sort of like the loyalty that you might feel, or I might feel, to a chocolate bar or something like that?
Well, on that point, I will say that I don't have specific loyalty to any one chocolate bar. I am all inclusive on all the chocolate bars, but that's only my own preference. But I think you can use technology to drive loyalty, but you have to think about it sort of differently. Is that and one of my favorite sayings that I've been saying for a long time is technology for technology's sake really doesn't have any value, right? It's how you apply that technology, how a hotelier will apply that to drive more efficiency, right? to really work on improving service, understanding your guests, reducing costs. And when you think about it like that, you think about it holistically, what that does is it enhances the guest experience. And it doesn't matter about your loyalty program. I shouldn't say it doesn't matter. Loyalty programs are in place. They've been around for years. Incentives help, but it's really about the guest experience. How did the guest experience the stay, right? What's the feeling the guest has during the stay, and importantly, as they walk out to get into that car and go back to the airport, a train station, or back home. And I think if you wrap around all the uses of technology and the ways that you can improve it, whether it's internally, and when I say internally, it's also what kind of staff experience do you provide? So if the technology is providing a great staff experience, that's going to translate into a great guest experience. And so, yes, technology can play a role, but you've got to think about it holistically, and how do you use that technology to really enhance that guest experience? Because it doesn't matter how great the program is or what kind of great incentives you have, or even your brand. It's what did the guest experience during their stay, and what's going to pull them back to do it again.
It's interesting that the incentive comes into play with loyalty, because that's how it's been seen, hasn't it? It's like, I buy 10 coffees and I get one free. It's an incentive program. It's a reward program. It's not loyalty in that kind of term that we would know loyalty as outside hotels.
So if I can there, and it's sort of like it captures the guest, right? So there's almost this incentive to say, oh, I've got my 8 coffees and I need 2 more, and I don't really like this coffee, and I'd much rather go to the one that's next door, but I just get 2 more and then I can get that free one. And what you really want to do is, that's the wrong way of incentivizing. I think what you want to do is that instead of the guest thinking, I've got this free one coming up, it's that I really enjoyed that stay and I love that property, and I'm going to go to a new destination, and I know that this is the hotel I want to stay with, because I know that they're going to replicate the experience that I had 3 months ago. So I think it's very much about, I would say, positive reinforcement than almost sort of negative reinforcement, right?
Yeah. My dog can tell you about that. I try to use positive reinforcement to train him. But
is he loyal?
Just I know how to get into the kitchen. So he's very, goal oriented. So which is a positive experience. So to kind of pick apart all those different things that technology can do within that experience, let's look at service. Where do you see technology helping with service?
Well, I think if you think about it in 3 different ways, I'd say personalization, mobile, and artificial intelligence. So, personalization, the better that you know your guests, the better you can provide a great personalized experience. So again, profile systems, loyalty programs, they've been around for years. But there's a great opportunity to enhance these by incorporating additional data. You've got to look more broadly at guests, and not just their preferences related to the hotel or related to their rooms. What kind of booking experience do they like, right? So again, back to the guest journey and the hospitality value chain. It's not just about where you're staying. It's that how are guests interacting with the hotel when they make a booking? What kind of interaction with staff do they prefer? Do they prefer to come in and check in contactless? And especially in this, what I'll call COVID world, because I'm not sure we'll ever get to post-COVID. We have to consider that contactless is very important. Do they want that interaction with a live person when they come in? And what kind of additional experiences do they value? The more information you can incorporate and then deliver to your staff, the more personalized service they can provide to the guest. And along with that, and sort of related, is mobile. Don't ask the guests to come to the hospitality, take the hospitality to the guests. So put your staff where they can easily interact with guests in the guest's preferred space, right? So check in, don't necessarily have to go to the desk. You can, I want to go and sit in a comfy chair in the lobby and have a drink. And, a mobile enabled staff can come over and check you in. But it's also touch points anywhere on the property, and just make it easier for your staff to provide that great guest experience that's in line with the guest preferences. And the last one I'll say, AI, artificial intelligence. I mean, we're already seeing this with chatbots, right? Chatbots do provide enhanced service. Now you say, how does talking to a robot or typing with a robot really provide enhanced service? But it's really because you're sharing information in a much more efficient way. No one's getting on a chatbot to have these long conversations. They're saying, hey, can I extend my stay, or what are the new COVID restrictions here, and do I need to have a different type of test? Those kinds of things are essential information, but really delivered really, really efficiently without having to involve a live person. But I think that you're going to see more advanced applications of AI. So observing guest behavior, and that may sound a little bit big brother-ish, but it's really about collecting information and to better understand guest preferences. Again, back to the point, we are used to giving up a lot of information about ourselves, and especially when we know it's going to provide some value back to us. So it's better understanding what our preferences are and helping the hotel to anticipate relevant offerings that, again, enhance the guest experience. I think what you'll find with me, I keep going back to the guest or the people experience, guest and staff. I mean, when you're doing this, when you're using observations, additional information, and those new offerings that you're providing to the guests, they often can be seen as really a delightful surprise. So it's like, how did you even know? So it's incorporating, additional information, and again, outside just what's specific to the stay, but how does the guest actually interact? Do I like to use WhatsApp to order my food delivery, and how do I prefer to go to a retail shop and purchase there instead of getting something from a delivery service? So those things are important, and they don't necessarily they're not specific to a guest staying in a hotel, but it can inform you about how you want to interact with those guests.
And so with my behaviors that you're observing, what behaviors is it that you're observing within the hotel? If I, walk on the left-hand side of the corridor, or what means something to? I
mean, it could be that. It could be something more about where would you most likely find Eric, right? So would it be sitting at the bar? Would it be sitting at a table in the bar? Would it be having a drink in the lobby? Sounds like I'm drinking a lot, but I'm on holiday. Would it be at the pool? And just understanding what are the spaces, what are the areas that a guest would, a specific guest would prefer to be in, right? Is it sort of a grand library feel where I want to go in and have a cup of coffee and pull off one of the classics that's in the library? I mean, I think the more you understand how guests use the spaces that you have, the more you can cater to them individually. So how great would it be if I said, you know what, I've got 30 minutes before I'm going to leave, and my wife's upstairs and she's getting ready. I'm going to go into the library. I'm going to pull down a book and read it. And then all of a sudden I've got a cup of coffee beside me, because they know that I like to have my flat white while I'm reading my classics. It's those kind of things that you can understand. How does the guest not only interact with systems and technology with staff, but actually interact with the physical building as well?
Yeah. And so I presume it's good for experience, it's good for loyalty, but it must also be great for operations. That you need to have your library cleaned and ready or not. And I was wondering, obviously, the two things that the sector is experiencing most at the moment are costs and inflation and all the horror that goes with that, and something the sector has always had a problem with, which is labor. You talked about live people and where you can and can't place them. How can you assist in getting a better view on where and when you need people and where and when you can cut costs?
Yeah, and I want to heartily agree with you on something you just said. This is a challenge that the sector has been facing for a long time, right? So staffing challenges, right? This is what we're facing now, is just an extreme extension of what really has been this ongoing challenge. And hotels have always looked at how they can make their staff more efficient, right? And it's not about headcount. It's about, let's make them more efficient at the tasks that are low value or don't involve guest interaction, so they can spend more time focusing on the guest experience. So, but even at higher staffing levels, this is important because the real value add is that interaction with the guest, right? I think, again, there are three ways that you look at this through technology. And the first is automation. Any kind of repetitive low value tasks, you can automate those, right? Make sure you take real people away from doing those tasks that can be done through a system by a computer, and you make them more customer facing, more guest facing. The second one is revenue optimization. And you say, oh, that's not quite obvious here, but really, I think the better that a hotel is in providing added value to guests, and this is what guests are willing to pay for, the more efficient the interactions become, and the more self-sufficient guests become. So if you, especially from a loyalty perspective, if you walk into a hotel and you say, I know I've already purchased some add-ons, some additional experiences, maybe some enhancements, a better room, and I know that there are going to be opportunities for me to do this, then it isn't this sort of conversation. You've already set the guest and created that mindset where you reduce that interaction, you're enhancing the guest experience, and you're also driving more revenue. So I think I like to look at it in that way, and revenue optimization, and sort of put it into this cost and efficiency bucket. And then the last thing I'd say is resource allocation. Dare I say the words, big data? I mean, it can mean a lot of things, but we have more information than ever before on operations, on demand for services, on interactions between guests and staff, and so on and so on. I mean, by looking at how and where hotels are providing value to their guests, they're going to better understand what skill sets and what staffing levels they need for any kind of occupancy levels they have or any kind of event, right? So there's no business in the world that is over-resourced right now, but in the hospitality sector, it's really squeezed. So you want to make sure you've got the right people working at the right time and still providing that great guest experience. It's easier said than done, but it is doable. And I think that using technology and using the ideas around it of better understanding your guests and their needs will really help with that.
That all sounds incredibly nifty. But do you think that technology companies and software companies are selling correctly into the hospitality sector? Because I have been at any number of conferences, and I'm sure you have too, where you sit there and you watch somebody go through a PowerPoint and then you press this and then the guest does that and then you do this and then it looks like a graph and it's very exciting and look, you can put it on that and so on, and it's just suicide inducing. Do you think that people are should be selling differently, should be selling into the results? Do we really need to see how it works? I go to the doctor and see graphic examples of how I work. I don't want to see that. I just want to see the solution and how it's all going to be better. Do you think that people are doing it right?
Well, I can't speak for my competitors, but I think that the key here is to focus, again, not on the technology, but how it enhances the people experience. So the experience of staff and guests. Again, the hospitality value chain, right? So across that chain, no matter where you sit and what your niche is or your focus, we all have a common customer, and that's the guest. And so we should be really focused on how we are making it easier for hoteliers and their teams to provide that guest experience. And from a technology perspective, how are we providing a great staff experience? Because that translates into a guest experience. So I think maybe I should think about it more and communicate it more as a people experience, right? So you want to provide staff the tools and the systems and the ability to provide that great guest experience. Again, one of my favorite sayings, if people watching this, if they only remember one thing, it's, technology for technology's sake has little worth. How do we use it to transform the overall hospitality experience? So I think that when you're talking about the presentations you were talking about that seem to talk a lot about features and functionality, and how cool the tech is on the back end. And, you know, you raise the bonnet and this is what the engine looks like. You're sort of missing the trick. Now, you know, if that's how my competitors want to continue to sell, then I'm going to encourage them to do that. But I'm going to really focus on the people experience, how we can enable staff to provide a great guest experience, because that's really what it's all about.
It really, really is. And we've all been lacking in too many of those over the past couple of years. So thank you very much for your time today. It's been gripping. And I'm going to close by asking you, when you go into that library and have your flat white, what is it that you are reading?
Oh, that's a good question. I've got sort of varied tastes, but you know what? One of my favorite authors is Hemingway. So if I can grab and read 15 minutes of Hemingway, that's a good start to the day.
Exactly. Then you can go off, have a drink, fight a war.
Yeah, it really does give you that sort of sense of enablement, doesn't it?
Doesn't. There's nothing wrong with that. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for your time today, Eric. It's hugely appreciated.
It's good to see you, Catherine.